Crossing Lines, Part 3.
The bear roared, pawing its head, rolling on the ground, ignoring Russell and Grady. "No animals around, huh?" Grady rubbed his head as Russell helped him to his feet. "There shouldn't be," Russell said. "Must be smarter than your average bear." "Bad for it, but good for us." Russell grabbed Grady's hand in his own and held it out towards the bear. Grady struggled to pull away, but Russell held him in place. Let's see if you have what it takes." Grady felt Russell cast out for the tormented creature. He felt the bear's muscled skin, the texture of its fur, as Russell wrapped their combined will around it. And the bear reared up on two legs, its scream doubling as they caught it. "Shush!" Russell spat the word. The bear's scream died mid-breath. Grady grasped what was happening instinctively, as if he'd known how all along, as if the knowledge was in him, waiting to be freed. "It's no threat to us!" Fran shouted on the other side of the thrashing beast. "Let it go!" Russell giggled. "Not a threat, no. An asset." Russell's fingers fell away from Grady's, leaving him in full control of the bear. Grady met its eyes and saw its blind terror, felt its heart beating in his hands, and knew he could make a fist and crush it, taking the bear's power into himself. "Take it," Russell whispered now from close behind. "We're in a fight that can't be won without a cost in blood. Take it." Grady licked his lips. The control. He was stunned by how seductive. "This is necessary, Grady," Russell urged. "That rift is too strong. To close it, a sacrifice must be made." A sacrifice must be made. Grady remembered another sacrifice. Grady paced the front walk, wondering why a little boy had been put in stockade. He turned at the sound of the door opening and saw the base commanding officer emerge, close behind a man clad in a suit and tie, despite the desert heat. The CO nodded to the man vigorously, obsequiously, tugging at the collar of his uniform. The guards on the door followed the CO and the man in the suit down the walk. The closest guard studied Grady as he passed. Grady nodded and looked quickly away. He felt a bullseye painted on his chest. He breathed deep, same as he did scouting point in hot zones. He let color fade from the world. Nothing to look at here. Nothing to look at here. Grady risked a glance back through the closing door of the stockade. The guard had looked away and had fallen into place behind the man in the suit. He watched the base commanding officer draw a circle in the air with his hand and bow. The man in the suit returned the gesture and punctuated it with a fist. Grady fled inside. In an unlit cell, strapped to a bed, he found the shell of the boy who had saved his life. Habib's eyes were blanks, his mouth wide, in a silent scream. A sacrifice. The Sentinels paid a visit to Habib. Grady knew it as truth and shuddered, releasing the screaming bear and staring at revulsion at the fingers which had bound it to him. "Fool!" Russell raised his hand to bind the grizzly. Grady grabbed the man's forearm, held it tightly between them. "Hey, what are you doing? It'll rip us up!" The bear moaned. Grady and Russell turned to see Fran scratching behind its ears and laughing. It rubbed against her, almost knocking her to the ground. "Oh, Lord, you stink," she said, and swatted it on the rump. It moaned again and bounded down the hill. Fran smiled at Grady. "Didn't think you'd do it." Grady smiled right back. "Didn't feel right." "The things we're facing up there are nothing like us," Russell raged. "They'll use us up and throw us away, and you had better be ready to do the same." "Sounds exactly like you, Russell," Fran said coldly. The gentleness she'd shown the bear scoured away. Grady pushed Russell's arm into his chest. He stumbled backwards. "And you get to decide who to sacrifice." "Yes, we do." His face was red as he pointed to Fran. "Without us, this world would be a playground for demons and monsters. Don't ever doubt that. And anyone that doesn't fall in line, you wipe out," Fran spat. "Our elders kept the snows and waters safe for centuries, until you came and brought our children to residential schools, ripped the magic from us, from me, and I begged you not to take her." Her voice began to break, but she marshaled herself. "I'll fight your kind with whatever I've got left." Wind stormed down the mountain, rising fast. "We can argue later," Grady screamed over it. "Right now, you'd better do..." The white ball surged again, slicing through Grady. The eternal hunger he'd felt earlier entered him, saw through his eyes, bit into his heart and mind. Tears welled as Grady's mind was torn open, a violation 1,000 times worse than Russell's binding. He looked down and saw white tendrils reaching through him. He saw them skewer past him to his companions. They screamed, the tide crashing against them, overwhelming. Russell let his terror own him, and he lashed out, pushing Grady further into the light. Fran stretched her spirit to join with Grady's, lending him her strength. Grady clawed his physical hand back for Fran's, and her touch felt like a single gulp of air before another wave of otherness crashed down on them. Russell kicked again, this time landing on Grady's bad knee and sending him deeper into the light, binding him there in the path of what came. The pain in his knee was nothing compared to the touch of the light. Barbed wire wrapped around his soul. Grady opened his mouth to scream, and light sprayed out. Fran squeezed his hand. "You can hide," she gasped. Hide? It was too late for that.
Grady.
The thing in the light tasted his name. Cold wind tore through his flesh like claws. More of what he was fell away. "I'll kill you quick," Russell slurred, harnessing what was left of the ley line to spin Grady around to face into the light. Grady writhed in the grip of the thing tasting him and waited for the end. "Big, dumb hero," Fran grunted, and yanked on Grady's shoulder to fling herself past him into the light. "Hide!" her mind called to Grady's, and her spirit flowed into him through the touch that saved him, filling the empty, torn places where evil had fed. Grady felt Fran's wisdom enter him, her teasing laughter warming him from the inside, ripening his instinct and ability. He understood her gift, and the cost. "Thank you, Fran." Then she was torn away, lifted into the air. She screamed. Imbued with new skill, Grady turned and shattered Russell's binding. Fran's knowledge guided his fingers as he reached into Russell's chest and pulled. "I'm a fast learner, Russell." Grady saw the Sentinel's shock as his defenses crumbled, as Grady reached inside and squeezed his dark heart. Russell's body went limp. He whipped his hand along the ground, spattering Russell's blood and spirit at the border of earth and alien light. Something in the light screamed. "Go to hell!" Grady commanded. Denying the light with all his will, it rippled, drew further back from his short strength. Fury radiated from the light and out of the searing corona that hid somewhere else. A rotting hand, the height of a man, appeared, reaching for something to crush, reaching for Fran. "No!" Grady shouted. He grabbed for Russell, shoved him past Fran, and clawed her back, pulling her into their world. The stench of decay followed an enormous fist as it smashed onto dirt, dug for a purchase in our world but found none. As it slid back, it wrapped around Russell, bloated fingers shaking him with an impotent rage that shattered bone as it fell back into the light, shrinking to a speck, and was gone. Still Grady felt its rage focus on him, a rage without end.
"We will have you."
That wisp of hate lashed out, wrapping again around him and reeling him in. His knees slammed against the stump of a tree, and he clung to it, screaming, barbed wire again tearing his flesh from the world. Fran's hand slapped at his thigh. "Don't let it see you." He looked down at the stump cutting into his fingers. Animal stubbornness took control. Color faded from his vision, and something in the rift squealed again, as smoke and shadow lost its hold on him. The blinding white winked out of existence. Thunder echoed again across the mountain, and silence followed. Grady crawled to Fran, pulled her onto his legs, and held her, trembling. "Oh, don't pout, kid." Her eyes fluttered open. "No way I'd let Russ feed you to—" Fran's body spasmed. "We save the world?" Grady nodded stupidly. She tugged at his jacket. Okay, then get lost. That storm will break up fast. Telly hasn't got a word of magic. He'll be fine. But don't you let them find you." Grady looked up to see golden dawn shining already through holes in the clouds. He couldn't leave, not like this. Below him, a trickle of the ley line flowed. He placed a hand on the ground, tapping the line, and fed the energy into Fran's heaving chest. "Oh, see? You're getting the hang of it. Oh, Lordy, but that feels good." Fran sighed. "You taught me how, Fran. Least I could do." There wasn't much left in the line, but it was enough to ease her pain. Fran grabbed his hand. "You use what I gave you, kid. Stand up to those." His voice caught. "I will, Fran. Always wanted to die in him. In a man's arms, she cackled, and drew her last breath. Grady closed her eyes with shaking fingers and cried for the stranger, his teacher. He could sense Russell's brethren out there now, close and closing fast, felt their hate as they sensed him back, and then he felt their fear as he hid from them with perfect, effortless control. Grady let go of his last tears, lifted Fran into his arms, and started down the hill.
Crossing Lines, Part 3.